Birdhouse Dynasty Show. Championship week. That's right. Get settled in here and get ready for championship week 17 of the NFL season. I'm ready for any of your questions, concerns, matchups. If you've got some trades lingering out there in a no trade deadline league, go ahead, hit me up right now. But we're going to get going right into the Thursday night primer of the Seahawks Bears tonight. And we'll, you know, dabble in with the receiver options that you've got, whether you want to decide between Geno or Caleb Williams. If you've got some other options, throw them my way. Let me know what you have to decide and who you are deciding between. I know that I've got a couple of games I had to decide whether I wanted to play DK this week or not. Last week I I didn't start DK in a league where I it was a toss up between him and Khalil Shakir basically, and went ahead and started Shakir. It didn't really matter because I got blown out by 50, but yeah, DK would have been the better start. Learned my lesson there, I think, in that DK is such a blow up type player, even though he had scored less than 10 points for 4 straight weeks, that he's somebody that I'd feel terrible, the pit of my soul, about not starting if he blew up in a meaningful playoff game. So keep that in mind in particular when trying to decide for your start sit decisions, especially in pivotal playoff games like we have this week or last week in the semifinals. Just think about, if you're debating between two guys, who are you going to feel worse about if you didn't start them? For instance, last week, I started Patrick Taylor over Debo Samuel in one league, and that burned me. Okay. So there's certain things, DK and Debo had been disappointing for a few weeks. And so it was it wasn't an easy decision to make, but at the same time, and I'm not saying it's simply just start your studs and ignore everybody else, because Patrick Taylor had an opportunity last week. But if you know the 49ers offense and the way that Shanahan does things, you know that Debo was likely to get involved in the running game, which he did. And Patrick Taylor just kind of fell by the wayside. Now, it's hard to imagine because, like, we've seen Jordan Mason, we've seen Elijah Mitchell blow up for the Niners over the past couple of years, and it's just like, well, anybody they throw back there will blow up, right? Well, not necessarily, because that didn't happen with Patrick Taylor last week. So anyway, what I'm getting at here is DK is still a legitimate player. Get him in your lineups. DJ Moore may have been struggling, but you got to play him if the opportunity is there. Now, Roma Dunze is somebody who is definitely borderline. Um, but again, it comes down to your roster construction and who you have as options right now. Point being is I wouldn't be picking up somebody like Parker Washington off of waivers, or Elijah Moore, or just throw names out at me. I mean, there's hot wide receiver Olamide Zaccheaus, right? Would I start Zaccheaus over DJ Moore? No, I wouldn't even start him over Roma Dunze. Okay, I know Zaccheaus had a big week last week, but that had to do with the game script. They were trailing the Eagles for a good amount of that game, and that's why Jaden Daniels threw the ball so much. So you got to kind of look at the game and the matchup and how you think it's going to play out. Now, here tonight, we've got Seattle and the Bears, and I know it's in Chicago, but Seattle is favored. And so you want to look at it like it's a favorable game script for Zach Charbonnet, especially. All right. JSN, I think, will get his looks no matter what. He's going to get 7 or 8 targets. I think DK will get 7 or 8 targets. If you look at his numbers over the past month, skip over last week and at the bad games for DK, we'll bring him up here. He still had a lot of targets. It's just that he wasn't. Here we go. Okay. Now his targets since week 11, since their bye, and he came back from his injury. You can see right here. Okay, they're 9, 5, 9, 6, 3, and 7. Okay, so he had one down game against the Packers, which was just 3 targets. Other than that, though, even the 5 and the 6 games, he had 4 for 59, 4 for 49. Right, if he got in the end zone those days, game's fine. The other two, 7 for 70, nothing wrong with that. 4 for 49. Again, if he gets in the end zone, not a bad week. I mean, last week he was only 3 for 57, but he got in the end zone. Now, this guy is still, even with JSN doing better this year, DK's still the main target in the red zone. And so Seattle, in a positive game script tonight, should have some red zone opportunities, meaning DK should get some looks. Now, if I'm going to have to decide between him and, say, DJ Moore, all right, we'll bring up DJ over the last few weeks. All right, so scroll down here. Okay, now DJ Moore has gotten more targets over the last few weeks. He's got multiple 20-point performances there, but this is going back 4 weeks. Now, recently, he's still gotten 8, 8, and 10 targets. Okay. So the Bears struggled on the ground last week, and so they threw it a lot more than they were accustomed to. So if it was DJ Moore or DK Metcalf, I'd be starting DJ Moore this week. Right. Keenan Allen definitely would be starting. Right. Now, it depends how shallow your league is. Hopefully, you're not debating between JSN and somebody, because that'd be kind of ridiculous. But I would start if I had the receivers in all the game, all tonight. I would start JSN first, Keenan Allen second, DJ Moore third, DK fourth, and then Roma Dunze fifth. Okay, now where it gets interesting, I think is if you've got questions between DK and DJ Moore, DK, and Roma Dunze, and then you've got other options coming up on Saturday or Sunday or even Monday night. So those are the questions that I'd like to try and help you answer tonight. Zach Charbonnet, to me personally, is a smash start. Without Kenneth Walker in the lineup, expect Charbonnet to get 20 plus touches and a couple of red zone opportunities. DeAndre Swift, start at your own risk. Again, it comes down to other opportunities or other options and how deep your league is. If you've got 4 flexes that you've got to try and fill, well, then DeAndre Swift obviously becomes a better option. But again, if you're debating at flex between DeAndre Swift and Roma Dunze, it probably leans Swift slightly, but if it was DJ Moore or DK, I would start them over Swift tonight. All right. So that's where I'm at. Now with quarterbacks, you're looking at Geno and Caleb Williams. Now let's bring them up over their last month of the season here. Geno. Okay. So Geno struggled 2 weeks ago against the Packers, had to be pulled out because of a knee issue, and Sam Howell came in, so that kind of deterred that week. Obviously, 15 and 19, buck 49, and an interception. So a rough week for him that week, but he came back, at least fantasy wise, pretty strong last week. 31 of 43 for 314, 3 touchdowns, 2 picks, and a wild one against the Vikings. Now they did lose that one, but doesn't mean that they didn't perform well offensively. 24 points is generally enough to have you right in the game, and they were. And Minnesota basically had the ball last, and that's how Sam Darnold led them to victory at the very end. But I was pleasantly happy about his performance last week. The week before against Arizona, just 24 of 30 for 233 and a touchdown. So they didn't throw it quite as much as their average. I mean, they're averaging close to 40 pass attempts. If you look at his numbers previous to the bye in week 10, you can see here 34, 29, 28, 52, 40, 56, 34, 44. And week one, they had just 25. But you can see Geno's pass attempts are roughly somewhere around, I want to say at least 35 and above. So they're in the top half of the league passing wise. Um, Again, hopefully tonight we get to see some fireworks for y'all's championship games. I've got 5 that I'm involved in. I was happy that Kenneth Walker was announced as out early enough that I have Charbonnet, and then I'm comfortable starting him in place. I mean, I'd almost rather be starting Charbonnet versus having a Kenneth Walker Charbonnet split. Like I feel like Charbonnet has a higher ceiling, right? And we've seen that a couple weeks ago. Um, Before we get into Charbonnet, though, let's finish up on the quarterbacks. And so we just talked about Geno and now Caleb Williams. So if I had to debate just tonight and I had to pick one, I would be starting Geno over Caleb. Now, I have not been the biggest fan of Caleb Williams. Uh, Basically, right from the get go. I mean, you can go back into college, and I didn't love Caleb Williams. I didn't see his game translating. Excuse me. I didn't see his game translating well to the NFL, much like some other podcasters, analysts, scouts all said that what they were worried about. I was aboard with that, and that is his propensity to try and extend the play, get outside the pocket, make things happen. Yes, that's great. Good athleticism. The comparisons to Patrick Mahomes, blah blah blah. I can't tell you how many young quarterbacks I've seen in my lifetime. I've been playing fantasy football since the strike season in 1987. Okay. They do not tend to last long in this league. You need to learn how to throw the football in the pocket. And hey, that's why Lamar Jackson's having such a great season this year. That's why guys like Donovan McNabb stopped running around so much and decided they needed to learn how to become good pocket passers. McNabb and Steve Young are the best examples I can give of scrambling quarterbacks who learned how to throw the ball in the pocket and then extended their careers and had Hall of Fame careers. That's what Lamar Jackson's doing right now. That's what somebody like Caleb Williams, who has he has elite talent. I'm not saying that. Problem is though, if he doesn't learn to harness it and get in line with the coaches and learn, I mean, look at he has Keenan Allen, DJ Moore, and Roman Dunze for crying out loud. Like it just blows my mind how many other quarterbacks would just drop dead to have this trio of wide receivers. And then, I mean, you throw in Cole Kmet and a couple good receiving running backs. Like this guy just, I mean, all right, he's quarterback 14 on the season, which isn't terrible. But part of it that comes into play here is the fact that he's got like Jaden Daniels just blowing up, who really only has Terry McLaurin. You can't tell me Terry McLaurin's any better than DJ Moore or Keenan Allen. Not a chance. Right at the same level. Okay. I would argue Keenan Allen's the best of all of them. And DJ Moore has more talent than Terry McLaurin if you're splitting hairs, but they're all in the same ballpark, right? but then you add Roma Dunze, he's way better than anybody that the Commanders added this year. So the fact that Jaden Daniels is easily outperforming Caleb Williams is cause for concern. Then you have Drake May, who has nothing like Caleb Williams in as far as talent goes. And I'm going to be loving Drake May this offseason. I'm telling you, because his value is just going to spike once they add a receiver or two, whether they go after T. Higgins very hard or draft a receiver in the first or second round this year. New England's going to help Drake May some way. Now, Caleb Williams, I don't know how much the Bears can help him this offseason. Are they going to be able to keep Keenan Allen? All right. So these are things that are a little concerning. Now, what I do like is that he's got a rapport that he started with Rome Odunze. So Rome, with his stats being down in relation to like Brian Thomas and uh, uh, Malik Neighbors, all right, Rome is one that I would consider a buy candidate for this offseason. So just something to keep in mind. I'm not talking about week 17 right now here because Rome is somebody who I'm wishy-washy on whether I want to start him, who I want to start him over. But just keep that in mind for Rome going into the off season. Now, tight ends, you got Cole Kmet and Noah Fant. They're basically in the same bucket, in my opinion. Some have Cole Kmet pretty high, but I never was really sold on him. So they're kind of in the same bucket, right around tight end 15 to 20 ish, somewhere in there. If you got to play him, you got to play him. All right. But there's been better options to pick up over the course of this week. I mean, for instance, I would probably start Chigo Okonkwo over them. He's somebody who's performed very well over the last two games, and tight end, it's not a spot that you really want to be chasing points, but when you see somebody that's hot like Chigo Okonkwo and he's got Mason Rudolph behind there throwing for him, maybe they've got a little bit of a rapport going on, right? Meanwhile, you got somebody like Noah Fant who's been there all season and he hasn't really shown to have many spike weeks so far. Cole Kmet, I would probably between the two, I would lean Cole Kmet. He's just had more uh, big games than Noah Fant this season. So, and again, the game script plays into it. I see this as a sort of like a 27-20 Seattle game, maybe a little less, 23-19. But the Bears, the way they've been able to make comebacks in games. So if Seattle gets up early, I could see Seattle getting up to 30 points and then the Bears chipping away on a comeback. So like 30 to 21, 30 to 22, 23-ish, something like that, where Caleb gets some nice garbage points for you. Again, though, I would probably lean Gino. I couldn't blame you for starting Caleb, but I'd probably lean Gino if I had to decide between the two of them. All right. Now, where it comes into question is if you're debating between like Caleb Williams and Drake May this weekend, right? The Patriots have a matchup against the Chargers on Saturday at noon. They open the triple header up on Saturday. So that's where it gets tricky. Just again, I'm not going to answer all these hypothetical questions in my own head. I'd like to hear from you guys who you have to debate between. Maybe it's even in just your third place game or whatever consolation game. I don't know. But heading into next season, if I were to rank the, if I were to rank the 2024 rookie quarterbacks, I'd start with Jaden Daniels for sure because he's proven everybody wrong that was against him. I was not against him. I got him in one league and obviously very happy about it. But if you're comparing him to the rest of the rookies, he's made it up into the top 5 elite quarterbacks. Like Jaden Daniels is right there with Jalen Hurts to me. Up top, you've got Allen and then Lamar, and right after him, that's where you're talking Hurts and then Jaden Daniels. So I mean, it's right there. And so then you go down to the next tier, and that's where I would put the argument of Bo Nix versus Drake May versus Caleb Williams. And so For me, I would personally, if I was doing a startup draft and I had to pick between the three, I would pick Drake May first because I think his talent relating to the NFL game is the best. And with limited weapons, he's shown his both as his athleticism and his ability to adapt to the NFL game better than Caleb Williams. Bo Nix has adapted to the NFL game very well. I just think that Drake May's ceiling is higher than Bo Nix. Bo Nix is sort of right about here, but that doesn't mean it's bad. Like Drew Brees in the Sean Payton system never had like elite talent, so to say. He had an elite mind that he was able to relate with Sean Payton very well. And so that could put Bo Nix potentially at some time in the future in the top five conversation. Like the guy can run. He just doesn't have that much talent around him right now. I mean, honestly, he's throwing to Court Sutton, right? It's very similar to Jane Daniels in just having Terry McLaurin there. So those two are definitely the most impressive so far this season. Drake May's grown a little bit of a rapport with his tight ends. Okay, that's the way he's been able to get things accomplished this year. So kudos out to him and his ability to do that. But New England's got to go out and get somebody for this guy, whether it's Ted McMillan in the draft or they go after T. Higgins hard in free agency. Adding one of those two would be tremendous for Drake May and his future. So that's what I'm hoping for with that. Now, obviously, if I'm doing a startup next year, I probably will have that information. I don't know that I'll be doing any kind of startup in the near future, but once we get into February, then we'll start talking about that. Right now, when I'm comparing the rookie quarterbacks, I'm still leaning Drake May and Bo Nix over Caleb Williams. If you got to throw JJ McCarthy into the mix now, that becomes a tougher decision there between McCarthy and Caleb Williams. Both of them have great talent around them. With JJ McCarthy, we basically just have the great unknown, right? So we haven't seen him suck. We haven't seen him be awesome. What we have seen is Sam Darnold be awesome with the Vikings and their tremendous talent around him on offense. And from what McCarthy did in preseason, it looked pretty good, but preseason is different than the regular game. So if I had to pick between Caleb and JJ McCarthy, I'd probably just barely slightly lean Caleb, but honestly, I'd probably go with my heart and I'd rather take JJ McCarthy just because he's got the hookup with Jefferson, Addison, and Hawkinson right there. I trust that trio better than what the Bears have slightly. It's very close, but I guess I would go McCarthy. I don't know. Honestly, that's a tough call. But any of you out there have any questions about that? That would be great. Good discussion there you could have. But yeah, I'd slightly lean McCarthy just because of what I've seen from Caleb Williams so far. It hasn't been any different than kind of what I expected from Caleb Williams. Going back to the draft, I remember marking that he just reminded me of Jameis Winston Winston, his freshman year, blew up and it was his redshirt freshman year. He won the Heisman for Florida State, won the national championship, and then everything in college kind of went downhill a little for Jameis after that. And he still was drafted number one because he had so much hype. But that's kind of what happened to Caleb Williams. He won the Heisman, then came back the next year, and it was a little bit less as much of a statistical season. And then, he still had so much hype. He ended up being the number one pick, even though you were really just buying that number one pick off of the hype from the previous year. And Jaden Daniels was the one who was actually hot and had won the Heisman, and he had gained all this momentum, moving him up all the way to the number two pick. And he just continued that momentum into his rookie season on the NFL level. And so that's something to keep in mind when you're looking at quarterbacks. Now, this year's quarterback class in 25 is definitely not as talented as the 24 class. You have a couple of names there, though, in Shadir Sanders and Cam Ward. You can throw Jalen Milrow into the mix and some others, Jackson Dart, Quinn Ewers. We don't know if he'll be back or not. Same with Milrow. We don't know if he's coming back or not, but that will be determined in the next few months, and we'll know that more about it then. But for the time being, what we do know of the 25 quarterback class is that it's just not quite on par. Like if I had to put Shadur and Cam Ward into the conversation, they'd be somewhere in between, you know, somewhere in between McCarthy and Caleb. Honestly, I would take McCarthy and Caleb over any of the guys in the rookie quarterback class coming in. So there you have it. I mean, I'm not that high on Caleb, and I'd still take him over any of the quarterbacks coming in this year. Now, go talk running backs. It's a totally different story for the 25 class. But other than that, if you're looking for defensive options tonight, I do like the Seattle D. You've got an erratic quarterback in Caleb Williams. He doesn't mind getting sacked a lot, so look for Seattle's D to be putting on the pressure early and often. I don't know like what their blitz rate is, but look for them to mix up coverages, try and confuse Caleb, and get after the quarterback. Now, if they build up an early lead, of course, then you'll have a second half where they're going to be getting after Caleb. But yeah, main thing to watch for tonight is going to be Geno's knee. Can it stay healthy? Seahawks are still in the battle for the NFC West, so it's a huge game for them. They need to stay even with the Rams because they need to win. They won't win the strength of schedule tiebreaker, which is what it'll come down to. If they beat the Rams in the last week of the season, they're going to need to be ahead of them because the Rams will have the tiebreaker with the Seahawks. So, yeah, Seattle definitely needs to come out with the victory tonight. And so they're going to be pulling everything out. The Bears are playing for pride, but they are also playing to try and develop a young quarterback. So they're looking to win games. They are out of the race for the number one pick. And so they're going to probably end up somewhere in between picks 5 and 15 ish. And so they're going to get a good player regardless. But look for that tonight. And yeah, if I don't have any other questions, just reminder, hit the like and subscribe. Any other questions you can throw my way at buymeacoffee.com/Birdhouse Dynasty Show, or check out the Patreon where you can see my rookie rankings at patreon.com/Birdhouse Dynasty Show. And other than that, I thank you for joining tonight. It's been quite a week with the holidays, Christmas. I thank you all for watching all season long. It's been a blast doing this, and look forward to more shows. Matt and I should be hitting one up tomorrow morning to sort of preview for the triple headers on Saturday and into Sunday's big games for all of your championship matchups. With that, thanks again for joining. Never stop working.